Hi, I'm Ted Pattison. Welcome to the Office Developer Screencast virtual tour. In this video tutorial, we're going to talk about how to get up and running with Excel Services. Excel Services provides a powerful server-side calculation engine and rendering engine that can take Excel spreadsheets that are stored inside a SharePoint document library and render them back to the user through the browser. We're going to start by configuring Excel Services, turning on the service, and making sure that we have configured a trusted file location. Then we're going to crank up Excel and step through the process of creating and publishing a spreadsheet up to a SharePoint library. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started by creating a new SharePoint site. So I'll go to the Administrative Tools menu and choose SharePoint 3.0 Central Administration. And I'll bring up the web application that allows me to create a new top-level site. So at the Central Administration homepage, I'll click on the Application Management tab and click on the link for Create Site Collection. And this will allow me to create a new site. So why don't we call that Litware1. And when I create this new site, I'm going to go ahead and make the owner of the site just the Litware administrator. And let's go ahead and check the name. And also, because we want to make this the simplest demo, I'm going to base everything on just a regular WSS v3 blank site template. So I'll go ahead and choose OK. And SharePoint starts moving through the provisioning process right now, where it's creating the top-level site, creating the containing site collection for that. And after it's all done, I'm going to go to this site and create a single document library, which is going to hold our spreadsheets. Okay, so now that everything's done here, let's go ahead and click on the link to the new site. Here we are at the new site that we're going to use to host our spreadsheets that we're going to use in Excel Services. And I'm going to go to the Site Actions menu and choose the Create command. So I get to the Create page, and I'm going to go and create a brand new document library. So I'll create this new library, and I'm just going to call it Spreadsheets. And just to be thorough, I'll change the document template from a Word document to an Excel spreadsheet, and I'll choose OK. At this point, I have a blank site that has a single document library named Spreadsheets. So here's where I want to upload my spreadsheet so I can start using them through Excel Services. But before we do this, we're going to go back to the Central Administration program and make sure things are configured properly. So I'll Alt-Tab back to the Central Administration web application, and let's start at the home page. Now the first thing I'm going to do to get Excel Services up and running is make sure that the service is actually started. And so from the Central Administration application, I'm going to click on Operations, and I'm going to click on Services on this server. And when I do that, I get to a particular page, and I go down and look at Excel Calculation Services, and I notice that mine has been started, but that in a default installation of Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, this will not be started, so you're going to have to go ahead and click this to go ahead and configure that to be started. Okay, once you've ensured that Excel Services is actually on, the second thing you're going to do is you're going to go through your Shared Services administration page. So if I go to this link that says Create or Configure Farms Shared Services, notice that I've already set up Shared Services in this particular farm. If you get to this page and you don't have a shared service provider, you're going to have to click on New and fill in these particular input boxes so that you can give SharePoint the information it needs to create a new shared service provider, which involves doing things like creating additional databases inside a SQL Server. Since I've already created mine, I can go down here and just say Open Shared Services Admin Site. And when I get to the Shared Services admin page, I see all the different shared services, of which Excel Services is the one I'm interested in. So here are 5 different links. Let's start by clicking on the first link, Edit Excel Services. If I go up here, there's really nothing I'm going to have to change to get the Hello World demo working. But notice that there's different types of file access. There are different parameter values for how long workbooks are cached once that gets added in. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. The one thing I'm going to have to go add in is a trusted file location. So Excel Services doesn't just allow users to upload spreadsheets anywhere into the farm. The administrator has to pre-configure one or more trusted file locations, which is a set of URLs that Excel Services will honor as places that users can put spreadsheets. So if I go ahead and click on the trusted file locations, and I'm going to choose to add a trusted file location. Now, if I want to, I can just put in an entire IS website, or in SharePoint terms, an entire web application. I could put in HTTP localhost, and I could go ahead and click on Children Trusted, which means trust all child libraries and directories inside of this particular site or this web application. I'm not going to be that promiscuous. I'm going to go over and I'm going to go back to my site. I'm going to take the specific URL for that document library. And with that specific URL, I'm going to go ahead and add that inside here. And then what type of location? This is the Windows SharePoint Services location. Do I want to have directories or child libraries in there trusted? In this case, I'm just going to have the top level document library be what I've configured as my trusted path. There's a couple other parameter values you can look at, but there's no need to change those. One other one I'll point out is that when you're configuring a trusted file location, you get to specify how Excel Services will deal with connections that it discovers inside of a spreadsheet. And there are two kinds of connections you could have. You could have one connection where the connection string is embedded in the spreadsheet, and that's what we call an embedded connection. This new version of SharePoint adds this new ability to take a connection and to take the file that specifies the connection and save it in a special type of library, which is called a data connection library. So what you can do is you can also add a data connection library, add connections, and then say that any spreadsheet in this trusted file location can use those. So maybe we'll go ahead and check off that value too. And at this point, we're going to go back and choose OK. And so now we've configured things. So now that we've done that, we've configured everything that we need so we can go back and actually upload spreadsheets and start using them. Okay, the next step is where the end user gets involved. This is the person who's going to be using Excel. So why don't I go ahead and I'll go to Microsoft Office and I'll find Excel 2007. I'll go ahead and start Excel, and let's say that I want to do some basic things. So I create a new workbook. Inside my workbook, let's go ahead and rename things. So let's say that we want a mortgage calculator. Secondly, we want to see some sales figures. And finally, let's say that we want to have some information in the last tab is going to be secret. We don't want to show people. Okay, let's go back to calculations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a mortgage calculator. And inside my mortgage calculator, I want to have a loan amount. I want to have an interest rate. I want to go ahead and have a number of years. And finally, I want to know what the payment is going to be. Now let's make this a little bit more beautiful. Let's go ahead and make the font a little bit larger here for my calculator. Also, let's go ahead and put in some initial values. So let's say $100,000, and we're going to have an interest rate of 0.075, and well, I want to calculate this for 30 years. And so let's go ahead and make it pretty. So I'll go ahead and format that for currency, and format this for percent, and we'll go ahead and format this for currency, so when we have a payment. The next thing I want to do is let's go ahead and make these name ranges. That's going to be an important part of leveraging Excel services. So I'm going to go to Formulas, and I'm going to say name a range. I'm going to name this first range loan, and notice that it's picking up the fact that there's cells over to the left that have captions in them, so it knows to go ahead and make these cells name ranges, and it's automatically selecting the values inside there. Make that a name range. And then finally what we want to do is we want to add a formula in here for the payment. So remembering all my Excel knowledge, I'm going to choose the absolute value, and then I want the payment function, and when I pick the payment function I'm going to take the rate, but I need to divide through by 12 because it's going to be a yearly rate, and then the next thing I need is the number of periods, which is the number of years, times 12, and then finally we need the value of the loan. And once we get all that information inside there, we should have a formula that is going to work. Okay, so that's all we need to do in this first example right here, just have this little loan calculator. Let's go to the next page right here, and let's go ahead and just put in some figures. So we'll have some sales figures, and we'll have east and south and north and west. And for this demonstration, why don't I just go ahead and create some sales figures. And now that we've got these, let's go ahead and just do some quick formatting to make this look beautiful like our other page right here. Let's go ahead and take these dollar values and format them with currency. And then to quickly generate a chart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the Insert menu, and let's go ahead and let's create a pie chart. And the pie chart I'll create is a very straightforward pie chart. Now that we've got the pie chart right here, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and put it right up here next to the figures. Okay, so now we've created our first page with the calculator, our second page or our second sheet that has our sales figures in a chart, and finally we have a last page. And what I have here is a little secret message that I don't want anyone to see. Okay, so now it's going to be time for me to take this and do a save as so I can publish it up to Excel Services. Now before I do that, I'm going to go to our Publish menu. And inside the Publish menu is where I can go to a command called Excel Services, and I can get to some special options. And so I can decide where I want to save the book. And where I'm going to save this particular book is back inside of Spreadsheets. I'm going to go ahead and save the book right here at this particular path. And once I get the book at this particular path, I'm going to save it there. But before I do the saving, I'm going to go down to this one little box down here, which is Excel Services Options. This is going to embed some information into the spreadsheet that's going to be used by Excel Services. And in particular, the first thing I want to do is I don't want to show the entire workbook. I want to select what sheets are going to be shown as pages. Once I do that, I want to show the calculator, I want to show the sales figures, but I don't want to show that secret page. Secondly, I'm going to go over to the Parameters tab. And what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to allow users through the browser to be entering input data that's going to be used by the Excel calculation engine. So I'm going to go and allow loan, rate, and years. Notice that they are all name ranges on the spreadsheet. I'm going to add them as parameters and choose OK. Okay, so now that I've done that, let's go ahead and take this spreadsheet, and I'll just call that My Sheet, and we'll go ahead and we'll save this back to SharePoint. As we save this back to SharePoint, it sees that I have the Excel Services options set up. So the first thing it's doing is it's running a test to make sure it can take this spreadsheet and render it. So if I hadn't configured the trusted file location, this would not work. But you can see now that it's able to take the spreadsheet that I've just saved back there and render it to me through the browser. And so the browser experience for users is to be able to see this right here. And notice that it looks a lot like Excel, but it doesn't require the user to have a version of Excel or Windows on their desktop. And also notice it gives the ability for the user to come through here, and let's say that we want a different loan. We want a $250,000 loan, and our interest rate's going to be a lot higher, and we want to pay it off in 15 years instead of 30 years, and I can go ahead and see that my $699 payment, if I change this loan, jumps up, quite a bit, and I can see the information that gets calculated in real time. Once again, just the user has the browser, and all the Excel work is taking place over on the server. Now, if I look down at the bottom of the browser, I can see Calc and I can see Sales right here. So I can go ahead and click on that, and you can see through the browser they're showing you the sales figures, and they're also taking that chart, they're rendering it on the server, and they're able to basically push it back and display it inside of a browser. Okay, now from the browser, notice that the user can automatically open this in Excel 2007. There's also a feature where if you don't want the user to be able to see the formulas, but you want the user to be able to see all the calculated figures and all the charts, you can create a snapshot. So this allows the user to open up a snapshot of the data as well. Now, if I go ahead and click on Litware, I'll go back to the site. Now, if I go and click on the spreadsheet right here, the default behavior, if I click on the spreadsheet, is to open this up in the desktop client of Excel. Okay, now let's go ahead and close that down, and let's go back to SharePoint one more time. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to configure things inside this document library, and I'm going to go to Document Library Settings, so that the default is to bring things up in the browser. So if I go to the Document Library Settings and pick Advanced Settings, notice that browser-enabled documents, when opening browser-enabled documents, display as web page as opposed to the default, which is to open in the client application. I go ahead and click OK, and at this point, when users come back here and click on the spreadsheet, what they should get is by default the server-side rendering through the browser.